worked nights as a baker. "Don't make a noise, your dad's in bed," Mam would warn us during the day. And then, at about 7 each evening, she'd say, "Give your dad a shout. It's time for his tea." Downstairs, Mam set a plate of chips and an egg on the table, alongside a copy of the Liverpool Echo. We lads hovered round him like gulls scavenging chips. Mam used to scold him for feeding us, but my dad seemed to survive on just tea and toast, or the cheese and crackers that Mam saved him for special. I know they loved each other. You could see it in dozens of little ways. When he left for work, she'd put a scarf on him and tuck it into his jacket. That was the closest I ever came to a public display of affection, apart from that Christmas when I saw him kiss her on the cheek. I loved my dad. I loved him when I didn't even know what the word meant. I used to get excited waiting for him to come home. I'd see him coming, or I'd hear the latch lift on the back door. Then I'd bury my head under his arm, which smelled of flour and warm bread. There were half a dozen air raid shelters in Land Street, and when Mam was heavily pregnant, it was hard for her to get us all out of bed and into the shelter. After David was born, it was even more difficult. Some nights Mum was too exhausted to care. She gathered us into bed, wrapping us in her arms, saying, "If we go, we'll all go together." We lay under the blankets, listening to the explosions and the bells of the fire engines. Whole blocks were flattened where Granny Tomlinson lived in Robsart Street. Her parlour house became a makeshift morgue, and she helped to wash down the bodies and get them ready for burial. This wasn't her job, but circumstances alter cases, particularly at wartime. Nobody called Gran by her married name. She was forever known as Fanny Hunter, and was the sort of character that Charles Dickens might have created. Fanny was small and stocky, with her hair pulled back from her face, and her house was always full of people. She had a sister living next door, and various daughters and sons-in-law, along with their offspring, lived in the adjoining houses. Fanny fed them all on a single gas ring and a big black fire grate where a big kettle steamed and potatoes cooked at the side. She also went to the wash-house 2 or 3 times a day, with a bundle of dirty clothes and sheets on her head. Afterwards, she did the ironing with an old flat iron heated on the gas ring. My grandfather was known as Black Dick and the Little Shoeshine Boy because of his dark skin. According to my Auntie Dooney, all of his brothers and sisters were white, and as a kid I used to think it was his job, mixing the black pitch to repair the roads, that made his skin so dark. Whatever the explanation, race and colour were never an issue in those days. Far more than race, it was religion that divided people in Liverpool. Religious intolerance was part of the fabric of my childhood, ingrained into youngsters in 1,000 ways. Catholics were different. It was us against them. But religion didn't seem to figure as large in Mum and Dad's thinking. Live and let live seemed to be their attitude. No one was rich, and no one was poor in Land Street. We were all in the same leaky boat, struggling to make ends meet. Mam cleaned 2 pubs and worked in a washhouse, and she also dyed our clothes or altered them to make them last a bit longer, because we couldn't afford new ones. In the kitchen, she weaved the same sort of magic. None of the meals were fancy, but there was always plenty of bread and potatoes. The winters were bloody freezing. By the time the coalman came through the streets, we were usually down to nothing but dust and fragments. In a really bad winter, I used to pull my trusty steering cart down to the coal yard in Roscommon Street, where they sold coal dust briquettes. You could wait up to 3 hours to get a couple of bricks made of compressed coal dust and cement. And if we were really lucky, the gasworks sometimes sold bags of coke for a couple of coppers. On the coldest nights, Dad would come home from the bakery and set the fire before we woke. God love him. By the time we came downstairs, the kitchen would be warm, and a big pot of tea and fresh barm cakes were waiting on the table. Then he went back to work for a few more hours. During the day, he slept and did chores around the house. His only vice was a little flutter on the horses of a Saturday. "Don't tell your Mam," he'd say, as he checked out the form guide. I don't think Mam really minded. It was only ever a couple of 2-shilling doubles. Dad didn't drink much. A couple of pints would be enough. Because he drank so little, Dad's mates would ask him to mind the kitty when they went to a pub. Dad would act as though this was a real chore, but in truth, I knew exactly what he was doing. He always skimmed a little.